Welcome to the Everybody Eats podcast. I'm your host, Blake Greenawalt. Have you ever shaken the hand of the farmer that feeds you? Our mission is to explore and share local food systems and show how food sovereign communities are established across the country. Join us as we speak with entrepreneurs, farm founders, innovators, and educators as we learn about their paths forward. Thank you, Josh and Terra, for coming on the podcast today. I'm excited to talk to you guys about Farmer Pirates Compost. Excited to learn about how it started and how you guys got into everything. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to talk to you.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this is kind of a switch up of the normal sort of topics about growing food. I'm sure we're going to go into that a bit. This is less of where your food comes from, but more about where your food goes, because we do waste a lot of food in this country and it's just going into landfills. But there's this wonderful thing called composting, which I know a lot of people do. I just started doing it a couple years ago and I'm still not even perfect at it, because when it's snowing outside and there's a foot of ice on your box, you may not want to trudge out there and put your food scraps in. So I'm a culprit. I don't do it 100%, but I want to at least get more people thinking about compost and understand the benefits to it and get more people involved in community composting and composting in general. To begin, we're just going to start with personal introductions. I want to know what got you guys into urban farming and agriculture in general, and then we'll get into the topics of today.
Sounds good. My name is Terra, and I am a founder of Farmer Pirates Compost back in 2012. I also was an urban farmer at Common Roots Urban Farm here in Buffalo as well, and that also started in 2012. And
I'm Josh. I've been with Farmer Pirates Compost for like 10 years now. We kind of work together to expand and get Farmer Pirates to grow and expand. But yeah, I was also at Common Roots Urban Farm with Terra.
Was Common Roots your first introduction to urban farming and growing in general, or had you done that like as younger, as like a child or growing up?
I lived in Maine for 3 years. I moved to Maine to apprentice on an organic farm, not an urban farm, but a small farm, and was there for 3 years in different parts of Maine. And then in 2011, I wanted to move back to Buffalo, and I had the intentions of wanting to start an urban farm and had kind of been following that scene in Buffalo while I was in Maine. And it just so happened later in 2011, after I moved back to Buffalo, I linked up with a group of people that were growing in all different sorts of capacity in Buffalo. And out of that grew Farmer Pirates Cooperative, which was a group of urban farmers that all kind of joined together to support each other in all of our different efforts, whether it was buying in bulk together, sharing supplies, just like, emotional support and policy work within the city. And that was also the impetus for me to start Common Roots Urban Farm, because part of what Farmer Pirates Cooperative did was sort of buy a few parcels of land cooperatively so that urban farmers had a place to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in East Aurora, kind of like adjacent to agriculture, and I had family down in North Collins, and they were on a large kind of commercial farming scale. So I can remember going out there as a kid and playing with the cows or whatever and whatnot. I went to school for geography, and I parlayed that into a fine landscaping career. And then I had my own landscape business. And as I was progressing with that, I saw that, there was a lot of opportunity for growing something other than ornamental plants, maybe food, functional plants in the garden. So I kind of progressed that way. And then I got linked up with Terra. She was advertising for a farm partner on Facebook. And we had mutual friends and we got linked up. And that's when I started growing food as a business lifestyle, I guess.
Awesome, like edible landscaping.
That was the farm. My landscape business was trying to focus on that, but it wasn't really taking off at that time. I was getting kind of frustrated.
Did you Do you ever incorporate, or I know it's a hard sell, sadly, but native plants into your landscapes?
That was where it started. Before it was edible plants, it was native gardens, and then it was like native edibles. And, how can we put a cranberry bush in this downspout area where it gets a lot of water? And just thinking differently, about what landscape is and how it can be utilized.
Yeah, I love that. When I was living in Los Angeles, I would just see dirt patches on dirt patches, and people would be watering them too. And it's just the silliest thing to me. Grow something else. Yeah, I don't know.
Americans are really addicted to pushing their lawnmowers on their 100 square feet of grass. Yeah, everybody has to have a lawnmower and grass to mow,
Yeah, I made a whole video about why grass is not just dumb, but at least for LA. And don't get me wrong, some grass is okay. And because we have dogs, we like that. And here where water's not an issue, it's okay. But still, it's just this thing that we've kind of accepted as oh yeah, you have a house and you have a lawn, and that's that. So that's great. Thank you for pushing the good side of landscaping and not just not the correct region, non-native business that happens.
Cookie cutter landscaping.
Yeah. That's a great introduction for you two. So we'll get into the first topic now, which will be all about compost. We kind of want to do a basic sort of explanation of compost. I know kind of what it is. I know it's basically just decayed organic material. And obviously there's many steps of compost along the way, from the beginning scraps to then the fine meshed out end product that you can actually sell. I guess just give your kind of definition of compost.
Well, compost itself is, as you had mentioned, it's the leftover, decomposed product of organic material. So it's a nutrient-rich fertilizer, organic, all natural fertilizer that can be used in farms and gardens, even your lawn, to really feed the soil. So that's what compost is. Composting is the process, right, to create the compost itself. And that can be done in lots of different ways. It's, it can sound complicated. You had said, there's all these steps. And there are, but really composting is not that complicated. It's a very natural, simple process that, we humans can guide and direct, that is happening already in nature on its own. We're just doing it because there is so much waste, and we're, trying to capture that, especially in an urban environment.
I know there's anaerobic and then aerobic and then also vermicomposting and probably some other forms too. I think bokashi is another one, but that just might be a form of one of those three I just mentioned. Do you use all three of those in Farmer Pirates?
No, Farmer Pirates, we just use aerobic windrow composting. We turn the piles with a loader mechanically. So it's a bit more of a labor involved process than anaerobic, which is kind of, like Terra said, a digester, which kind of is a self-contained unit that does it all to itself, where we need to keep incorporating oxygen to keep these living entities within these piles alive, and so they can do their stuff and break down the browns and the greens in the piles.
I always hear you need a good ratio of carbon to nitrogen, your brown and your green. And I've heard it's 4 carbon to 1 nitrogen. Is that sort of in the realm of right?
I think there's a big difference between home composting and composting on the scale that we're doing it. We're, not gigantic, but we have about 4 acres that we compost on. And we have a big pile of horse bedding with manure, and we have wood chips, and then we bring in all of our food scraps. Neither Josh nor I are the compost site manager. We probably are putting about half and half, sometimes maybe a little bit more carbon. It's not, I don't think it's an exact science when you're on that scale. Yeah. I know home composting, you usually there's a shortage of your carbons, your browns in the home composting system. We are luckily fortunate enough to really not have that problem.
But on those lines, there is a kind of a formula. So we have we put down a base of wood chips, and then we put down the food scraps that we collect for the day. And then it gets covered with however much horse bedding it takes to cover it. So in that sense, I guess it would depend what day it was, how much food scraps we bring in. But I would guess daily we probably bring in probably 7 yards of food scraps. Those 7 yards get covered with brown stuff, wood chips, and horse bedding.
Yeah, we'll get into where those scraps are coming from in the next topic. So, are there any sort of pros and cons to the way that you do the rows rather than the like digestive one? Because it's the same end product, right? Or is it different?
It's not, yeah. And so, so the anaerobic digestion happens in these, giant machines. And so, right there, that's like a huge investment, right? You have to have these huge machines. And then they're a little bit more limited in the kind of stuff that can go in those digesters. I recently spoke to someone that runs one here, and like shellfish, you have to be careful because things can get caught in the tubes there and clog it up. There's also things like there's a lot of compostable plastics out there, bioplastics, and that's a whole different conversation.
So-called.
Well, a lot of them are, and there's certified compostable products, but anyways, those things cannot go into a digester. And in a digester, there is decomposition happening, and it's creating, since it's anaerobic, it's creating a gas. And so the gas is then captured, the biogas, and can be used in other places. That is the major end product of that style of composting. You also get this really like the dried leftover materials, the solids from that process. And from what I just recently learned, the digester here locally is basically giving it away to large farms. You need to put so much on, and it's not super valuable. There is nutrients in that. Whereas the style of composting that we're doing, the end result is the compost. And, it shrinks down some from your original, material that you're using. But so kind of two totally different processes and end products.
Got it. Thank you. Because I always thought that the anaerobic was kind of a set it and forget it type deal. Like at my parents' house, my mom just keeps dumping food scraps in a pile and she doesn't really ever turn it. And actually now she has a perennial like spaghetti squash that's ended up growing there from a squash she threw in one time. So now that's kind of its own little like bed per se with just this crazy spaghetti squash with, I guess it's soil now or at the bottom it is, but she never turns it. But that's interesting. I didn't realize it was the gas byproduct being more so taken out. I just thought they were two methods to get to the same nice like soil type stuff. Interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm, totally. And there's so many different ways. I know I have some friends and know some people that, just go out in the summertime and just dig little holes in the garden or in the lawn and just bury their food scraps, and that's composting to them. And then, there's vermicomposting, and that is kind of doing what we're doing with the help of like a lot of worms. And, then that creates sort of a different, more rich product because of the, the worms are pooping and they're, that's super nutritious. They're all like a little bit different.
A bigger question about the impacts of compost, not just in the environment, but also with society and community. I know there is a mission behind this, and I know that's part of the equation.
Sure.
Yeah. When I think of community and composting, especially for us being in the Broadway Fillmore neighborhood, we have a large population of people who are coming from other places, immigrants, people from downstate that have suddenly room to grow stuff that they previously hadn't been able to. So there's a population of people who have the desire to grow their own food and garden. So in that aspect, I feel like our place in the community is helping to facilitate a little bit of education. But that's like the final product. That's the utilization of the final product. Getting communities to compost is difficult because there is a lack of education. There is not a large driving force that's making people, pay attention to this kind of thing. Well, there hasn't been until recently when the state started making businesses compost. It's been really a community effort. And Terra and I were just talking about this the other day, is how our customers are a community unto themselves. A like-minded group of people who are conscious about what they're doing with their food scraps. And how that is how we kind of developed a community unto ourselves, just with people who are composting.
Awesome. I love that. I was going to say something in there, but I didn't want to cut you off, and now I kind of forgot.
Yeah, just the impacts. I mean, environmentally, it's like, I don't know if it's obvious to everyone. There's food scraps. They're going somewhere. We often don't think about what's happening. We're just putting stuff in our garbage bag and then we put it out to the curb and then forget about it. Someone else's problem. And, this is just kind of bringing a little bit more awareness to, we can do something. These food scraps are like a really valuable resource that we can use over and over and over again to grow more and more food. And, I think there's an older EPA statistic, I don't know when the last evaluation has been done, that food scraps are like make up the fourth largest of all the items that are in our landfills. And then when they go into landfills, it's an anaerobic environment, so there's not any air, but things do compose slowly over time. And then when that happens in the absence of oxygen, it releases methane. And that methane is just going back out into our atmosphere, and has a lot to do with global warming and heating everything up. And so, the environmental impacts are just, let's stop that before it even gets that far. And maybe as you're doing that, then, you begin separating out your food scraps and thinking about that. And then maybe you're starting to think more about there is a lot of food I'm throwing away. Why? And maybe what's that about? Thinking about these different things. And yeah, I mean, locally, I think once you get a community all starting to think more about this, and maybe there's a community composter like us in your area that you can partner with, and then, neighbors tell neighbors, and then all of a sudden there's this locally produced compost being made available from the food scraps that you decided to not throw away and do this instead, where recycling is great, regular recycling, but as that recycling as opposed to food scrap recycling, you're not really sure what's happening after your plastic bins go out to the curb, but it's so direct. You're putting it out there, Farmer Pirates comes and picks it up. We're going to take it back to our, site within Buffalo. And a year later, there's going to be this other product that now, you can, purchase to use in your garden to grow more food. And it just really brings a lot of awareness, and you can really see the impacts.
We have this take, make, waste mindset that's just been driven down our throats because of capitalism and other things. And I'm not saying we need to throw that out, but that's why I'm doing this. I want people to start to at least sort of open their mind a bit to an alternative way of a circular system, which what Terra described of take, make, remake, and it's a circle instead of a straight linear line of waste. I know of a few community composting businesses in Los Angeles. I always thought it was an incredible idea, and I was in landscaping a little bit in Los Angeles, very minor, but I thought, man, there's so many landscapers out here. There's so much wasted green. You could have a business where you're collecting all that stuff and redoing it. And there's almost, to me, infinite product out there. It's just about creating the system to recapture it like you guys have done. I've always known that these businesses can work, but you need that component of education and awareness involved. So that's why we're here. How did Farmer Pirates Compost begin?
Yeah, so I said earlier that Farmer Pirates Cooperative formed first, and we were a group of local growers. And quickly, and we realized, and I personally realized, I've got this, big piece of land in this urban environment, and I want to grow food. That soil is it's not very alive. It's in pretty rough shape. In order for me to grow food here, I need to bring life to the soil. And how am I going to do that? With compost. Well, where can you get compost in the city of Buffalo in large quantities? Couldn't really do that at the time. There are a few places, for sure, in Buffalo, CJ Krantz and some places that you can buy compost, but so we truck some in from a rural area, composted cow manure, and it was super expensive, and we're trucking it in, and we're like, well, this is silly. We're farming in the city, and now we're taking resources from the country, and what can we do? And at that time, community composting around the country was still pretty new, definitely happening already. And so, we were like, okay, well, we have all these food scraps that are leaving the city that are perfect material to create the fertilizer that we need. And so really that's how it was born. We started a small Kickstarter campaign. We raised a little bit of money, bought a few trucks, and then just kind of, I think we started, putting it out there, and we're picking up from 20 households food scraps. And we began, just using pitchforks and turning piles. And that's how it started.
Having a landscape business, I had a truck and a trailer. So I was helping. They were all my friends that had founded this business with Terra. And like I said before, I was doing landscaping. And so I had the truck and the trailer. And they were looking to get bigger and needed machinery. I had experience with machinery. So like I went and I picked up a skid steer for us to try out at the site, and it was too weird, too awkward with the wheels. The site's a little messy. The machine was not adequate enough, but that led us down the road to get a loader.
So I know it seems pretty simple of how the operation works. It's you collect food scraps and you turn it into compost, but can you give a little bit of a longer rundown of how the actual operation is conducting the business?
Yeah. And I will just backtrack just a minute to say that, so it started out of this need for, all of us urban growers, larger scale growers to we needed a compost for our farms. And now, 13 years later, it has evolved a little bit more. Josh and I are no longer urban farming. Unfortunately, it's really hard to make a living running a for-profit farm in an urban setting. But over the years, our focus has really turned to, wow, what a huge impact we can make when we partner with the community to divert all of these food scraps, even if we're not farming. So the focus it started off a little bit like, selfish sort of in a way for our own businesses and our own growing needs to more like, wow, this is huge what's happening. And so, our business has grown a lot over the past 13 years, and the making compost part is just one. It's a huge piece, but it's just one small piece. We do a lot of organic waste collection. So we work with over 40 businesses and organizations. We have about 4 schools that we work with, and we have over 2,500 residents that we pick up from. So it's a lot of, we have a few drivers, 3 drivers, Josh here, that they go out in the trucks every day and they collect the food scraps and bring them back to the site. And once they're back to the site, then there's the whole process there. It's and it's a year-long process from start to finish right now, to take the food scraps and turn them into something. And it's, there's a lot of labor, a lot of equipment, a lot of time, resources that has to happen to take those food scraps and have them become something you can use again. So it's a whole process.
Do you have any rules to the collection, or is it kind of anything goes?
So we do have rules, and we give people a sheet or a magnet that has what we would like in the compost and what we would not like in the compost. We also work with this.
We have an app, just a Better Bin app that helps people to understand. They can scan QR codes. They can take pictures if it's not there to understand if something is or is not compostable. But essentially, if you can eat it, you can compost it, and we will take it. We do have some caveats around like meat and bones. We're trying to open it up a little bit more. We just want to be careful with that, making sure that, right, we're in an area that's nestled up against railroad tracks. We don't really have a big rodent problem because we have like natural predators, coyotes and fox and everything around. And we do a really good job with our piles and turning them and covering everything. But, adding meat into that whole mixture can just, add a little variability. But other than that, if you can eat it, we will take it. We don't take like bulk oils, and there are companies around that do collect oil and make biodiesel from that. Today, there's lots of these bioplastics, and there's lots of greenwashing that's out there as well. There's tons of stuff bags that they make this green color, and you think, it's compostable, or it says biodegradable, and people are like, oh, cool, yeah. And biodegradable and compostable are not necessarily the same thing. So, to help kind of distinguish what is and what is not compostable concerning compostable products like cups and plates and bowls and toothbrushes and all the things now that you can buy. There's 3 certification agencies just that manufacturers can send their products to have them rigorously tested to make sure that they are breaking down and decomposing into, 100% organic material to go back into the environment. And that's BPI, TUV, and CMA. There's a Canadian, like an Austrian kind of European certification, and then a US certification. So yeah, we try to educate people as much as possible. But compared to recycling, I don't know what your experience is, but I'm like, okay, what number is this? Can this go in? Can wax milk containers go in, or only this? And what about these clamshells? And I heard this, and you're never really sure. Where composting might seem like, oh, that's going to be so hard. It's really not. If you can eat it, it can go into the compost bin. So I really like to make that distinction that it's not really complicated. It's really much simpler. If it was made from a plant or an animal, it can go in.
But then again, you probably don't necessarily want like fecal matter either, right?
Yeah, so we do. I mean, we have these rules, but we also have these bins that are placed out on the curb, and people walk by, and people have dog waste. And so I often find, when I'm picking up, sometimes you open the bin and there'll be like a little doggy bag tied off on the top there, and, just something to be cautious or aware of. But yeah, the fact that we have the rules, and being a driver for so long, you see the contamination firsthand. And I'm like always like, I can get real disgruntled and real upset about like, oh my God, you put food waste in a plastic bag and then put the plastic bag with your other food waste into this compostable bag. And it's just like, drives me nuts sometimes. But there was a quote, and I've probably said this like 5 times in the past like 2 weeks. There's a quote that somebody said, and I don't even know who it is, but they said, we don't need, a small number of people doing composting perfectly. We need everybody to do it imperfectly. So like, yeah, I am picking up, and, we pick up from Tops, and a fun thing that they do with pineapples now is they put those little like plastic shirt tags through the, fronds on the top of the pineapples, and they put a nice little dole, tag on it. So, when I'm emptying the Tops totes and I see 40 of these little plastic things in there, I'm like, well, that sucks. That's a bummer, but at least they're here, and, we get to, screen them out at some point. Maybe they're small enough that they would probably get through, but yeah, at least the majority of it is compostable waste and not, these little plastic tags.
No, that's great. That obviously you need some rules, but I really like that quote of it doesn't have to be everyone or a few people doing it perfectly, everyone doing it imperfectly. I think that's a great quote. We'll have to find who said that.
Yeah, I know. And I like I said, I've probably brought that up like 5 times the past couple of weeks. And like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And it also ties back into this whole realm of like thinking about our food system differently. Of it doesn't have to be perfect. And I even said earlier, like I still throw away my food scraps sometimes because I don't want to go out in the snow. That I think discourages a lot of people, that they think it has to be all or nothing. But it's at least like whatever bit you can start to chip away will lead you down a path that ultimately will be better for everyone. So I've done that path. It started for me working in a restaurant in Boston where they source 60 to 80% of the food locally throughout the year, and they encourage seasonal eating. They had a seasonal menu that changed. It was also vegetarian and vegan, so they had that component to environmental impacts. But that just led me down a path to seeing how broken the food system is with like factory farms and all this stuff. And I was just like, what's going on? Like, we need to change this. Like, this is ridiculous. And some people are aware, but not everyone. And we'll get into like a larger conversation about the food system later. But it's just, I don't even know if it is possible to like, I don't want to like tear it down entirely, but I don't even know if you could still feed everyone like in a small farm future, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Because I still have some questions about Farmer Pirates. So are you getting enough food scraps right now?
So I don't know that that's like the question to be asked. I mean, are we getting enough? I mean,
Yes, we are getting enough food scraps because we weren't getting enough horse bedding to process all of our food scraps at one point, or we were running short on wood chips. And when we're running short on wood chips, it's like, oh, well, we need to find a way to source some carbon because, that's kind of the driver in this whole engine. But we're getting plenty of food scraps to run the operation that we have right now.
yeah, but I guess I don't know like what the point of that question is. Like we brought in and diverted together with our community like 1,400,000 something pounds of food scraps last year. And that's incredible, right? 719 tons. It's like, if you think about the size of 4 blue whales, we do these little impact statistics to try to help people visualize.
Have you ever seen a blue whale?
What?
Have you ever seen a blue whale? I haven't. I don't know. I have no idea.
I saw your post about that on Instagram, and I don't know about the whale thing specifically, but just having those numbers there, large numbers, like, is enough for me and anyone else to be like, oh yeah, that's obviously an impact. Maybe I should do this. Like, I think the little nitty gritty details don't really matter as much as the fact that like the numbers are there.
So that, and if you imagine, wow, that's only from like about 40 businesses, a few schools and 2,500 residents. And we collected that much. So there's like, just as it was with farming and there's multiple farms, there's so many urban farms. There are so many people that need to eat. Like
everybody eats.
You could provide so much food. There's never going to be like too much food. And I think on the opposite end, there are so many food scraps out there that are still being, going to a landfill. Do we have enough? Really? No. I mean, we need to continue to educate and grow and build and teach more and more people, and hopefully offer, especially to businesses, smaller businesses that produce a lot of food scraps, incentives. Like, it's hard to choose to pay money to do the right thing when, it's really hard to be a small business owner. So what can we do? What at the city level, policy wide, can change? Definitely New York State has enacted some laws in 2022, the food scrap donation and recycling law, which is requiring larger businesses that produce food scraps to divert their food scraps away from landfill, like Tops. We now compost with 18 Top stores, but, making sure that we just want to be supportive of all of this, and we just need policies and infrastructure and money in place. So that's a long answer to that question, but it's not so much as do we have enough, it's how much more can we get?
Well, and if we were going to be like real egotistical about it, like it'd be like, do we get enough food scraps? Like, no, we don't, because we're not keeping all the food scraps out of the trash system. We're just keeping a portion of them out. If we were doing it to max capacity and keeping everything out, that would be perfect.
So yes, the point of the question was to kind of draw out the awareness side of it. I'm sure maybe earlier on when you need more carbon and there's more like wood chips around, just because we're always chopping trees down and chopping limbs down, especially you being in landscaping, you're even more tapped into those resources and you need less of the green stuff. So I can see how you're kind of always ahead of the curve. But yeah, the question was more gearing towards you got there. So thank you. It is the policies and the awareness, and because it's like if you're not getting enough food scraps, then okay, we need to get this information out there so that people can realize, there's this business. That was another thing. So like, what does it cost a homeowner to get a bin?
So it's really exciting. In the city of Buffalo now, we have a free program. It's been grant funded by New York State. So if you live within the city of Buffalo, there's a program called Scrap It Curbside. There is a waiting list right now, but it is set to start expanding soon. And you would just go to our website, look for that City of Buffalo program, and you can sign up for free. And then we do offer subscription-based services outside of the city, pickup services, and it's all the different places are listed on our website. But Amherst, Williamsville, Cheektowaga, Kenmore, Tonawanda, East Aurora, and you pay. You get for $17.50 a month, you get a green 5-gallon bucket and a compostable liner. You fill it with your food scraps over the course of 2 weeks. You leave it out for us. We come by, empty that bucket, leave you a new liner, and you repeat. And then we also have neighborhood drop-off services. Those are for people who, maybe they're a really small household. They don't they don't produce as much to want to, pay for the home pickup service, or they live in a small apartment building and you can pay $10 a month to get access to, one of our neighborhood drop-off bins located, again, all over, and bring your food scraps there weekly. And we're also working with 2 other municipalities, West Seneca, the town of West Seneca and the town of Hamburg, and their residents have a subsidized or free drop-off service as well, with talks of trying to expand those in the future to pick up programs. So lots of different ways to access it.
That's cool. I didn't know you had a free one. And right when you said that, I was like, oh, I need to get on that. But then you said there's a wait list. So
Yeah.
Is there any sort of future plan for how you see the scaling? Because I know you've scaled it pretty well, in these past 10, 12 years. Do you have a sort of outlook into the next 10 years?
Our business, I just answered this question for somebody else the other day, and it's really fun to think about. And we have a meeting coming up on Monday where we're all going to be kind of talking and brainstorming about our visions for the future, for ourselves, for the business, things like that. But an important piece of our business is that we operate as a worker-owned cooperative, which means, currently there's 6 owners, and we're looking to hire 2 new employees, and every employee will have an option and a pathway to becoming an owner. And so, that's just to really build strength and solidarity in our workplaces, making sure that, all of the people that are doing the work to build the business have the opportunity to, see the benefits and gain equity in the business that they're working so hard to build. And part of that is also talking about cooperation, of course, amongst ourselves and with other businesses, the community. And so as I think about us growing and where we might be in 10 years, wow, what if we could compost for the entire city of Buffalo? And then what if it's in Hamburg and Orchard Park and West Seneca? And whoa, we'll be this huge business. And how much do we want to grow? And maybe there will be a point in my vision, there would be a point where we don't need to be the biggest composter in town and be the big behemoth. And, we can say, okay, like you were referring to earlier about I don't know if it was the LA compost people, but, I could see us, mentoring other people. We want a lot of different community composters. We want all kinds of people to have their visions and their ideas of how this might work, and to build something that, so we can all benefit. So I really, who knows, maybe we will franchise. Maybe we will go interstate. There's many composters who do, and hopefully we could still do it in a very equitable way. But I definitely see wanting to lift others up around us as we grow.
We've been playing in the shallow water for a while, and we've become very comfortable, but there's this whole shelf that we're standing next to where there's all these unknowns that we don't know, and that scaling up is going to create all these new challenges to overcome, and kind of going headstrong into that with the faith that we'll be able to figure it out. I mean, the 6 of us are all very intelligent people, and we all bring a different, aspect to the business. So I think having, smart people in a room trying to figure out what you don't know is, it's an asset.
For sure. And I think the owner-operator component is so integral, because for me, my first job was working for my dad in a drive-in movie theater in the snack bar, and it really instilled in me this owner mentality that I took to every other place I work at, where I'm always how do I make this better? How do I improve this? How do we be more efficient? So I think having the people see the future buy-in really kind of aligns them even more. And I know people working in this realm are already sort of bought into that and it is their passion. But even more so, they'll then be like, oh, this is going to be my thing, my baby too. So I'm going to give my 110% or more. And you mentioned the challenges aspect of not fearful, but it's like, oh, going into the deep end per se. You have the intention of the business is like so pure that it's like, that's to me like the strength. And then what you said about the asset of all the individuals in the room. So to me, it's like, yeah, do it. Like, I don't really see how you can fail, especially with, as you can grow the awareness, you then have more food scraps. And then it's like this perfect feedback loop that you've built. But are there any other challenges just to wrap up with the business?
As you scale up, you need more equipment. You need, potentially more land. And so it's usually like this financial thing. How can we make sure, we can continue to get access to the assets that we need to continue to grow. And we right now, because we're a worker cooperative, we do have some access to funding that's really friendly and favorable, and not like extractive, which is really cool. And then, I guess just all the things that probably are normal for any business as they grow, thinking about, the more and more people you have, there's a lot more going on, a lot more to manage, potentially a lot more conflicts. The more trucks you have out on the road, there could be more opportunities for things to go wrong, wanting to make sure that we maintain that connection that we have right now, I feel like, with our community, and not to lose that, and to really continue to provide like the level of service that we do now, which we like to be really good at what we do, and just keep maintaining that as we grow and not lose that connection.
Yeah. And I think, to piggyback off of what Terra said, I think another challenge could be, working with municipalities incorporates a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of red tape that, we're constantly kind of maneuvering and, talking to people, trying to figure stuff out. And yeah, that's a challenge that I'm not really keen on either. I don't like that bureaucracy stuff.
Okay, so that'll wrap up Farmer Pirates Compost. And now we're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're not going to have all the answers here, but it's going to be more of like a higher level discussion about how we even have food insecurity in general when we are wasting 30 to 40% of our food. I've always said it's not an abundance issue. We have the abundance. It's more of a logistics issue. And there's also other things wrapped into it, like food deserts and just access problems in general. How do we have food insecurity yet we're wasting 40% of our food?
That's a great question. Like I said earlier, it's multifaceted. It incorporates big players too, like, the government is a huge player in why food doesn't get to where it needs to be. They're also a big player in why we grow more food than we might need of one certain type of food. It may be subsidized for some reason or another. And then, a societal issue is just not having the knowledge of what it takes to make food, I guess. A lot of people don't understand that. And not that everybody needs to know how to grow carrots or whatever, but everybody should know that they come from the ground. You pull them out of the ground. But yeah, just having people invested in where their food comes from and understanding the logistics behind it, all the energy, people, power that it takes to get, your carrots from Southern California to Michigan or whatever. It shouldn't be lost on everybody. It should be maybe in one of the first things that comes into your mind is like, where is this coming from?
Yeah, that is the name of this podcast. Everybody eats. Where does your food come from?
Oh, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
But like I said, this is more of a where does your food go than a where does your food come from. But now we're into that part of the conversation.
Yeah, it is a huge thing. Like, how is that? And I do. I think it's just so multifaceted, and there's so many layers to, education, understanding, connection with the land, our removal of our connection with all of that, the, devaluation of farmers, farm workers, why is food so cheap? What does that mean? And I know it's not as cheap anymore, but, why is it that we pay X amount of money for rent and for car insurance, but like no one, people do expect food to be really cheap. Why is that? And of course we all eat, and we have to eat multiple times a day. So it's gotta be affordable. And why can you buy like all this processed food really cheap? What's happening there? And I was just thinking about the bureaucracy thing or the governmental thing. I'm even thinking like school food and school lunches, and even thinking about how like part of at least my understanding of the times that I have spent in schools as an adult is that, in schools, like they have to show that they're serving X amount of food to get the same amount of funding next year. So sometimes the kids are like, no, I don't want the corn today. I don't want this. They have to take it because they have to like record that all this much food is going out. So you're kind of promoting food waste in that way, especially to kids. Like, take it anyways and just throw it out. We're teaching all of these things all the time. Larger portions at restaurants, gosh, you could just talk about this forever.
Like I've always said, I think it's like a broken system, but for whatever reason, yeah, we have to feed everyone, but I say that, but like we're not. It's like, and that's when I say, okay, to me, the solution is slowly but surely chipping away at the larger industrial food system by whatever you can, whether it's, for me, like in the summer, I'm growing pole beans and I don't have to buy green beans in the summer. And I love that. I want to do more. And if everyone could have their one little thing, but then you start to think more about stuff like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be eating that, or maybe I can grow this. I can grow lettuce, like it's super easy. Maybe I don't know how, but that's why I'm trying to do this, is I want to get more people to be thinking about this stuff, and then we can slowly but surely like solve that problem, because all of this stuff that we want in these parallel food systems, they're happening, they're here. We just need to push on the gas more. And we do that by expanding the awareness and getting people to see the benefits. Okay, do we have any other thoughts on that, or we can go into a wrap up?
Food insecurity also, it can be, like you were saying, it can begin to be tackled on a community scale. Smaller farms, growing for yourself, growing for other members of the community. And in that sense, I feel like Farmer Pirates could be partner in that. That's another, maybe pie in the sky, idealistic vision that I have is, paring everything down, making everything much more communal, and dismantling the larger industrial food systems that do add to waste.
And I always say that, but then I'm like, I just bought a pineapple yesterday, and it's like I wouldn't be able to buy my pineapple anymore.
Well, and when we were farming, because you've been to the botanical gardens, and obviously it's growing all year round. You could have citrus, you could grow stuff all year round in Buffalo. We just need to find the ways to do that. I always thought it would be really cool to be a food sovereign county, like have just all your food be produced and available within your own county. And I think it's a viable thing. I don't know how reasonable it is, but I think it is,
Yeah, and the whole thing with the pineapple too. I guess the whole point of some of this is not to shame anybody, right? Yeah. Like it's global, sharing some food globally, it's happening. It's, maybe I always want to be able to eat a banana, but I guess just having a little bit more awareness, I think, just bringing, maybe I don't eat bananas, one a day, every day, all year round or something. Maybe I wait until I know when bananas are in their peak season in that country, or, just bringing awareness, I think, around those things. Sure, you want a pineapple, get a pineapple. But, maybe just don't eat, don't buy them once a week or something.
I also think it's funny because Dole, historically, as a company, has been like real influential in like international politics, and like I feel like their influence is much more than just fruit. I feel like fruit is the cover for whatever whatever they're doing on the backside, international politics and drug smuggling or whatever. They're like, oh, but no, we got pineapples, but we're going to sell them for you real cheap. We're going to get them from halfway around the world, and you're going to still be able to get them for real cheap. We're vetted by all these people, and everybody loves pineapples. How could you go wrong? Don't look at any of our other stuff, though.
I'm always just having that dilemma because I'm like preaching all this stuff, but then I'm still participating in the system.
Right. Well, and that's, you can't shame yourself. Every time you gotta have a little indulgence.
I was gonna ask how compost fits or not into the larger food system, if it does it all, because I know a lot of like the big mega farms and monocrops, it's usually like a chemical fertilizer, but I don't have all the data on that.
Well, along the lines of the fertilizer for commercial farms, that is just nutrients. Like compost is nutrients plus the biologics necessary for the plants to uptake the nutrients. So it's like, it's more of a tool, or it's more of a tool towards a solution than it is a Band-Aid for a problem, which I think, nutrient, you're not feeding the soil. The soil needs to be alive and can't just be dirt, because dirt doesn't have any life in it. You want all the other, rhizomes and whatever to help those roots uptake whatever's available.
Yeah, there's a huge ecosystem down there that we're not really like aware of, and compost is like, I don't know, like a cruise ship of like people going into the into the soil.
But that's where I think the future of food production is understanding healthy soils.
Yeah. Like I hear a lot about like regenerative agriculture, which is honestly like kind of a green and whitewashed like indigenous practices anyways. So like even that's like, I've had my dilemmas with that. And then compost clearly fits into the local food system, but I feel like we pretty much covered that of get it in the community, keep it in the community. And even when it does go to a landfill, I feel like, why aren't they extracting that methane? Like, or maybe some people are, I don't know.
Well, if you see those hills with the little white pipes coming out of them, we're just going to give it a nice, easy pathway to get up into the sky.
We don't want to blow this up.
Right, yeah.
All right, to finish, we do like a call to action, and that's either or both of you giving like one small and one large thing that listeners can do to support these local food systems, whether that's your business of organic recycling specifically, or just any other sort of advice for someone who's like not on the fence about this stuff, but like kind of knows a little bit about this, but maybe doesn't know like what direction they want to go. So maybe if you could give them a small and then a larger step that they could take.
Well, I think buying locally from local producers is key. As just like if you can meet your farmer, that goes a long way to establishing a relationship and creating understanding.
Yeah, say that in my intro. Have you shaken the hand of the farmer that feeds you?
Yeah. Well, and when we would sell stuff on, we had a farm stand at our little farm in the Broadway Fillmore neighborhood. People would be like, "Oh, you're charging this much for cabbage." It's like, I can go to Aldi and get this cabbage. I'm like, I am the person who bought the seeds. I planted it right over there, and now I just went over there and cut it, and I'm holding it in front of you right now.
This is worth more than that grocery store.
You go to Aldi and say that?
Yeah, but a lot of that also has to do with the fact of, we get into the bigger issue of the way socioeconomics work and why, maybe that person really does not have the money, cannot afford that. And there are people, myself included, I want to buy organic produce. I just don't, I have a limited amount of money and I have to buy food. And so I might think, and I don't have a choice how much I'm going to pay for my car insurance or my gasoline or my, health insurance. There's all these things that we don't have choices about. And the only thing we have a choice about really, are just these extra things, and food is one of those. And so getting people to understand too, why, okay, well, taste my cabbage, try this, see the taste difference. And then even myself, I might really know the benefits of buying this local organic food. I just cannot make it fit into my budget. And, that can be hard, just on the other end of that. So it's
a privilege for sure.
It is a privilege, and it shouldn't be. And how can we change that? And that is just like, it can be daunting. Like, how do we change the whole system? Why? Why are we paying so much money for rent? That is what I don't agree with. But
this is a food podcast, not a rent podcast.
I know.
The rent is too damn high.
But
it's all interconnected.
It is connected because, maybe. But my call to action on that end might be like, yes, definitely support your local farmer when possible. Get to know what's happening in your area. Where are the little farms? Are there little community gardens? But maybe if there's, maybe you're not really that into gardening, but is there one thing that you might want to start with? Maybe it's just a basil plant, as simple as that. Or I know, like, I was a farmer for lots of years and a gardener before that. And then I stopped farming and then I didn't have a garden. And then I was supporting my local farmer, which was great. But then I'm like, whoa, like I'm paying every time I go this much for like a few tomatoes. And then if I don't eat all of the tomato, because fresh tomatoes can go bad, I feel really bad. And then I feel like I've wasted money. And then I'm like, if I grow one tomato plant, I am going to have all the tomatoes I could possibly eat and enough to share with my neighbors. And if some happen to rot, well, I'll put them into my compost bucket and they'll go back into making more tomatoes. So just figuring out maybe the one thing you spend your most money on as far as food goes, or what's really simple, and just start one thing.
So tell the listeners where they can go to learn more about Farmer Pirates Compost.
You can check out our website at www.farmerpirates.com is where you can go and find out all about us.
And then you have like Instagram or other social medias?
And on both Facebook and Instagram, we're Farmer Pirates Compost Crew.
All right, awesome. And I'll include those links in the show notes so that people can just click on them. But thank you, Josh and Terra, so much for coming on the podcast today. I really enjoyed this conversation. And I hope you can drive safe home because we got some snow.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe, and please share it with someone that you think will enjoy it too.